At this point, I'd like to spend a few minutes and talk about some of our experiments over the years. I guess maybe it's best to refer to them as case studies because they've all been sort of um, trial and learning situations. The first one was something that the actual development of the systems thinking and action discussion group, along with systemswiki.org, was actually an exercise or an experiment in virtual systemic inquiry before we even knew that we ought to call it that. It was the interactions of a group of individuals who were interested in systems thinking, though we're trying to figure out how to put something together that made sense. So systems thinking in action was our first experiment. And then about a year later, we actually decided or understood that what we were doing was virtual systemic inquiry. So we did an experiment in virtual systemic inquiry to further develop and define what virtual systemic inquiry was really supposed to mean. So we were sort of bootstrapping the concept, and it proved very productive because the first effort after that about power grid systems, which turned out to be quite successful, employed a number of individuals from diverse backgrounds to really look at the nature of the power grid in the U.S. and what it needed to be upgraded to current technology, current capability. We then undertook. Now, each one of these efforts is probably, a half a dozen people involved in doing this. A half a dozen out of, at this time, probably a few thousand members of Systems Thinking in Action, which at that time was called Systems Thinking World. The hypertension intervention was an undertaking by a few individuals to better understand the options available to treat high blood pressure in individuals. It sort of had a mixed result. And I think the reason was that we were trying to better understand how one had to sort of nurture and shepherd one of these undertakings to ensure that it stayed on track and turned out well. The PSA test was another experiment that turned out about the same way in terms of it we had difficulty maintaining focus, and we were trying to develop a different type of diagram when we did that. And it's just another. We ended up with a very nice options map that we developed and found out that we could actually create that map in Insight Maker. Though we don't look back on it as a real successful undertaking. Successful business form was an effort to try and identify what form a business should take if it was to support sustainability over the long term, as opposed to simply attempting to be an engine to produce profit for the financial stakeholders. This is one that we did in debate graph, and I think that it would have turned out better had we had a more focused intent for that undertaking. The Systems Thinking World Journal is an undertaking to create a journal of articles by the members of the group, reviewed by members of the group, and then published to the rest of the group. It was very well defined, and it went pretty well for about a year, though I think it sort of lost its way. The difficulty finding content and finding people with enough time to review the content and just keep it on track. So I think the journal has sort of fallen by the wayside at the moment. Beyond Connecting the Dots actually falls in this category, even though it was initiated as a Kickstarter project and we had over 400 sponsors for this project. And it was initiated by two individuals who really wanted to develop this interactive type of ebook. And along the way, over a period of 9 months, there were probably 3 or 4 dozen people actively engaged in reviewing the content and providing feedback. And I think that this is probably one of the most successful efforts that we've had to date. I think a lot of it had to do with the author's realization that they were on the hook to deliver to the sponsors who donated money to 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 actually make it happen. And it's now being offered. And there's a link here to get to someplace where you can purchase Beyond Connecting the Dots. Enabling a Better Tomorrow is an effort that has been ongoing for several years and evolved from systemic perspective to systemic strategy to and the name has continued to evolve. And Enabling a Better Tomorrow is about, I think, where it's going to stay at the moment. And this virtual systemic inquiry is actually a component of this model that's sort of in ongoing stages of development. Right here is the Beyond Connecting the virtual systemic inquiry component, whereas it also has components for systems thinking and systems archetypes. And it's simply an ongoing effort to identify those models and methods which seems appropriate to employ in a systemic fashion to deal with a situation in order to intervene in a way that deals with the situation and doesn't and minimizes the likelihood of creating new problems along the way. And another effort that's currently in process is health and healthcare. Jeff McDonald in Sydney has been developing healthcare models for years, and we're currently attempting to figure out how to put some order in the models that currently exist. And once we get some order in what the content that already exists, we'll then go ahead and see if we can bring some other people into the project to figure out how to massage it to make it more consumable by a broader audience. And so this is, every undertaking ends up being a learning opportunity to better understand what we understand about doing this and what we don't, and what we still need to learn, so that when we pursue things, they produce a meaningful result. So that's a set of things that we have specifically tried to this point, trying to use virtual systemic inquiry, and with varying degrees of success. And we will continue on this path. And as we learn things, we will continue to update the model as to how to go about doing this. So, hope you found this informative. See you in the next video. Bye.